I have been doing wildlife photography for a while now, but I've taken it more seriously over the past year. Wildlife photography can have a steep learning curve. At the beginning, I had a lot to learn. I overexposed a lot of my images. I didn't shoot with a fast enough shutter speed, causing everything to be blurry. With this video, I'm hoping that my mistakes can be a stepping stone for you to avoid those blunders. Recommended shutter speed. I have found with birds, you need a lot faster shutter speed than with land animals. Now, I cannot say an exact number for your shutter speed in any given situation, but I can give some broad numbers. Backlit, flying birds. With backlit and flying birds, you will need a higher shutter speed. I like to use at least 1/500, but closer to the higher end of what my 90D can do, which is 1/8000. As for ISO of flying birds, I would suggest 100 or the lowest you can go. For an overcast or sunny day, you should set it as low as possible. You will get a lot of light from the open sky. The aperture you should use for flying birds is as open as you can, while still being well exposed. And I want to give you an answer for something that I didn't know for an embarrassingly long time. The light meter in the viewfinder looks like this, and you want that little dot on the bottom as close to the middle as you can. Perched birds in shadows. The most common position that you will see a bird is perched on either a branch or a bird feeder. I started my wildlife photography journey with a kit lens watching through the kitchen window, shooting a bird feeder. I still have a lot of bird feeders, but I've sort of gotten away from taking pictures at the bird feeders. As I have gotten more knowledgeable and a longer focal length, I was able to shoot from farther away, being able to not disturb the birds. Shutter speed for perched birds can be lower, as generally the birds will be fairly still. You may need to lower your shutter speed as they will probably be sitting in a darker environment. A good goal in photography is to keep the ISO as low as possible. I have mentioned in other videos, with higher ISO comes higher noise. In the day, your ISO should range from 100 to 800. If you are shooting in the dawn or evening, 800 to 1600. In wildlife photography, you will generally use longer lenses. Unless you are using a prime lens or a very pricey lens, then the aperture will be higher. I use the Canon 100 to 400 USM Mark II. It is an L series lens with an aperture of 4.5 to 5.6 on the wide end. Even with this higher aperture, you still have a decent amount of background blur and separation. Bugs and small creatures. Shout out to my short kings. If you want to take pictures of bugs or smaller creatures, the shutter speed to use is higher, as they move fast and you want to freeze them in action. While shooting small bugs, moving slowly and keeping your distance can help. I recommend 600 to 1000 for small bugs. For hummingbirds, you're going to need to throw your shutter into the high end. This picture is at a shutter speed of 1/8000. Bug ISO can be difficult, as it isn't the majority of my shooting. I do not have a set rig for it. I do not use flashes or softboxes. I always try and keep the ISO at its lowest of 100, as small bugs have a lot of fine details and you want to keep down the noise. With a lot of other sections of wildlife photography, the aperture when shooting small bugs should be kept wide open. It will completely blur out the background and the main focus will be on the bug.
Water birds or Loch Ness?
If you are trying to take pictures of our beloved Ogopogo or loons in water, when dealing with water, shutter speeds should be kept high. Freezing water can be difficult as you want to get every drop mid-air. I like to keep the range around 600 to 1000. ISO can be difficult here, as some of these are silhouetted. Shooting silhouetted birds will need a low ISO, 100 to 400, unless you are shooting away from the sun. In this case, you will need a higher ISO, in the range of 400 to 700. I like to keep the aperture at the lowest that it can be. I use the full range of my lens to keep my distance and to not disturb the creatures. So my aperture will be the latter of 4.5 to 5.6. Positioning yourself relative to the subject. Positioning yourself can be a tricky thing. You want to get closer, but you do not want to disturb the animals. Hunting hides can be a useful tool to get closer and not disturb them. I have hid in bushes alongside the water's edge to photograph loons. I have said this, and I will continue to say this, but if you are taking part in wildlife photography, do not have a negative impact on the animals. Be kind to the animals.